Hello and welcome to my forecast for the Virgo full moon happening March 18th. My name is Evan, the founder and lead analyst of Inner Worlds Astrology. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, Patreon. Now, before I begin, if you'd like a birth chart reading, a transit reading, synastry, or solar return reading, the link is in the description box below. So, I want to explain before I get into this full moon sort of the precedence that's been set by all the Pisces energy that's out there right now. So honestly, this is a really confusing time. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, why do I feel mellow? I have low energy. I can't get anything done. I just kind of feel sad and I'm not sure why. That's because there is a lot of Pisces. So Mercury has been in Pisces since March 9th, and it's kind of joined Jupiter, Neptune, and the Sun all in Pisces. And the thing about Pisces is that it's not about action. It's more about absorption and reaction to all the collective emotions that are out there. So all of us are really feeling the collective. And sometimes those emotions are not our own. So Pisces is really tuned in to every channel on the radio station. That's really how you have to think about it. It's like there's not one station playing at any given time. It's all of them at once. And of course, some stations are good, some are bad. And that can make us feel directionless, passive, elusive or confused. And simultaneously kind of inspired by the things that come out of our imagination from the concoction of all of those things. So, again, on the one hand, this is actually a time for spiritual awakenings, opening yourself up to new possibilities. A lot of astrologers talk about the upside of Pisces in that context right now, but to be honest with you, in my opinion, I think there's just maybe too heavy of a concentration of Pisces, and it's really weighing down on us. And so this is basically creating a fog in our minds right now, and potentially even some just deception. So when you're feeling down right now, when you're feeling sad, whatever you're feeling, just know that you're kind of picking up some subtle energies from other people or other places. So they're not necessarily your own, so just kind of hang in there. We're going to get a lot more fire, especially in June with, Mars and Jupiter in Aries. But even by March 20th, we're going to have the Sun in Aries. So just keep that in mind. So this is really a time for rest and relaxation, self-care, maybe taking a break. So just try to float above that sense of like fog or hopelessness, like nothing can be done. So think this stuff is still crescendoing a bit with that, what I'm calling the grand opening with Jupiter and Neptune conjuncting on April 12th. But otherwise, we are going to get some fire pretty soon here with the new astrological year. So that's great. Now, I also want to talk about the Virgo Pisces axis here. So we have this preponderance of Pisces energy, but at the same time, we have a full moon in Virgo coming up here. Now, the full moon is about bringing something to completion. So, check the house where this falls in your birth chart. So, let's say the full moon was in your fourth house. This could be the completion of a home improvement project. If it was in the fifth house, this could be the culmination of something you've been working on passionately towards. That's something that started as a hobby and then blossomed into something way more than that. So, in a lot of ways, this could be a time for manifestation. So again, check the house where specifically 27 degrees of Virgo falls, because I know for a lot of people that sign will span more than one house. So again, pay attention to 27 degrees of Virgo, and especially if you have planets, personal planets, especially at 27 degrees of any of the mutable signs, this is going to affect you. Now, to think about Pisces versus Virgo, Pisces is empathy for the collective. It's about compassion, service to a higher ideal. Virgo is a hard skill set, so you're providing the world with an actual skill that has effects on people's resources or daily habits. Virgo is ultimately about precision and perfection. And how do you become perfect at something? Through daily routines, having a process in place. But both of these energies are ultimately egoless. We're setting aside our ego to either get stuff done or, again, with Pisces, to kind of strive for something greater than ourselves. Now, these are both mutable energies, so they're subject to change. Our sort of situation is subject to change. Pisces is open to cosmic feelings, collective emotions. Virgo is open to new information. And with all the Aquarius we have too right now, I do see information traveling really fast. Now, where I said Pisces was tuned into every radio station at once, Virgo is laser focused on one radio station and doing that really well. Whatever frequency is there. So in a lot of ways, though, because these are on the same axis, they're two sides of the same coin. So we're talking about ideally merging these things. So with that Pisces stellium, we're feeling sort of this endless compassion. But then with the Virgo full moon coming in, it's like, okay, how can we manifest this through devotion to work? Something tangible. How do we merge the divine with the everyday? So can a leaf on a tree inspire you? Can your daily morning breakfast inspire you? That's at play here. And I really think, though, the theme right now is how do we persevere through the fog? So like I said, there is a fog right now. There's, again, this concentration of Pisces that's leaving us confused. But with Virgo, it's really about working consistently. So Virgo hopefully will give us a little bit of relief in this situation. And another question, ask yourself, what is the hard work necessary to realize a dream? If this was only Pisces, then we would just get lost in that fog. We'd be detached from reality. We probably wouldn't do anything with it. So this Virgo full moon, March 18th, pay attention to that day. That's a time when you can actually start to put pieces together, compartmentalize things, decide, okay, this is incrementally how I want to reach this dream, how I want to translate that to the real world, something that used to initially just be in my imagination. Now, this full moon, with all these placements right now, this is actually forming a kite formation. Now, the kite formation is very dynamic and interesting because, usually a kite, at the bottom, at the base of the kite, we really have a grand trine, in Earth signs. And the grand trine is with the moon, Pluto, the North Node. And, with just the grand trine, we're just talking about a harmony of that element with Earth. So there's a lot of practicality here. But with a kite, you introduce a sextile, a grand sextile on the top. And in this case, Pisces is really at the point of that. So again, the spiritual inspiration is pushing us forward here. And then there's an opposition between the moon, the sun, Neptune, Jupiter. And that opposition is creating some dynamic, a challenge, almost a confrontation, again, of these things of how do I merge the divine with the everyday? Now, in this case, the moon is opposing the sun, Neptune, and Jupiter. And to be honest with you, that can just create a lot of confusion, deception, detachment. Sometimes with Jupiter, they're even overconfidence, or we're just feeling like we can really do anything if we put our minds to it or feel inspired. With the opposition, sometimes that can be excessive. So my advice here is to, really try to use this Virgo moon to the fullest to ground you, to not let you go any further with Jupiter, because Jupiter in Pisces, there is no dream that's too large. There's no feeling that's too exaggerated in a lot of ways here. But, of course, it can be too much. So the Virgo full moon is an outlet, really, to try to translate and really fixate in a positive way, to fixate on something and concentrate on something where, okay, I have this creative idea. What are the parts and the pieces necessary to get it done? And at the same time, there's no planets in fire signs right now except for Chiron and Aries. So this kite, even though it is dynamic theoretically, if we take a textbook interpretation of astrology, without any fire signs, I do kind of wonder how much people can accomplish with this kite. But I want to get into, there's of course a lot of other energies right now which might provide some relief. But before I do that, I do want to talk about the situation with gas prices, which is actually playing out in this chart. So Pisces rules gasoline and oil. And given Jupiter's sort of expanding nature, and we could see a continuous climb here. I'm not an economist, so take that with a grain of salt, but astrologically, it's certainly at play. And this can impact commerce with Mercury in Pisces as well. So the moon in this case is the people, it's the public. And in Virgo, it's about daily routines and responsibilities. So the most obvious way to kind of conjunct or combine these energies is that the translation is that gas prices will affect the daily habits of people. So to a significant degree, an observable degree from what it is now. So potentially less commuting, less leisurely trips. I think there's going to be some cascading impacts of the gas prices that start to manifest around this time. And the moon is trining Pluto. So in this literal sense here, we're literally going to have to transform our relationship to our daily habits in response to those inflated gas prices. Now, even economically, we have some evidence here of some shocks, price shocks, shocks to currency or markets, because Uranus is squaring Venus. And with Uranus and Taurus, this is about a change in financial security, the money situation, and then squaring Venus, which already rules Taurus. This could be again, a sudden change in the markets, in the price, maybe again, of oil or gasoline. But the interesting thing is that there's mutual reception going on, meaning that Uranus is in Venus's sign and Venus is in Uranus's sign of Aquarius. So ideally, there's actually a productive dialogue going on. If there isn't necessarily a price shock, it's more like, okay, what's a new way to conceive of something like value or currency? Maybe this is a moment for crypto, in a positive sense for that industry. But again, with that Uranus square, the square is quite tense, and it's hard to resolve that. And so there could be some tension there, in a way that again impacts the everyday prices that we see. But in a personal sense, this is a potential for shocks in relationships. I'm not going to lie, for some people, especially with heavy fixed sign energy, this is the potential for breakups even. But on the other side, maybe some excitement, bringing some excitement into relationships, the unexpected. Maybe this could even be about impulsiveness, sometimes in a bad way, but in other times, this could be having the drive and the motivation to sort of explore new types of relationships you never would have thought of before, especially because Mars is still kind of conjunct to Venus. So kind of embrace that this time. People could come and go into your life very suddenly and have a significant impact, even if they're only around for a few weeks. This is the time for that. So don't be alarmed if someone, kind of jumps into your life and then disappears suddenly. Now, I do want to talk also about Mars in Aquarius. So I talked about this on TikTok, but Mars in Aquarius can actually relate to things like cyber attacks, shutdowns to electrical grids, breakdowns in machinery, trouble with technology, breakdowns in communication. And 2 days after I made that video, Spotify just basically shut down for a few hours, where no one, at least in my vicinity and on Twitter, no one could log in mysteriously. And regardless of what the inevitable cause of that was, this is an archetype of Mars in Aquarius. And so Mars is still there, and it's squaring Uranus right during this full moon. So pay attention to sudden shocks there as well, where suddenly the internet or the website shuts down that you rely upon, an app shuts down, you have trouble with your phone. My advice is to back things up, on a hard drive. But even more broadly, will there be breakdowns in communication within a country, within a region, within some type of system that impacts maybe the supply chain with Uranus and Taurus? That could happen. And the other thing, though, on the positive side, Mars in Aquarius is counteracting Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn's been in Aquarius really since March. Well, it sort of ingressed into it March 2020. Stayed in it after December 2020, and of course that's been correlated with lockdowns, restrictions on group gatherings. And so Mars is bringing up a little bit more motivation for people. It's renewing a motivation to gather in groups, to collaborate, and that could yield some really novel ideas in areas like technology. So pay attention to the ideas that are floating around in groups. If you belong to a group, local organization, this whole time that Mars is in Aquarius, this is a great time to channel that motivation and act on it. To say, okay, let's get together, even if it's outside or whatever works for you. Get together, because this is a good time for cross-pollination of ideas. Elsewhere with Mars in Aquarius, this could be anti-war protests, humanitarian aid. Aquarius can rule alliances, so if we're thinking about like NATO, this could be an increase in humanitarian aid, to Ukraine, for example. So it's a complicated energy. Mars in Aquarius is very interesting. It's multifaceted. And again, I think, but the signature here is that conjunction to Venus, which is, in a lot of ways empowering us to form new relationships. But then that square to Uranus, I do see some chaos, some unpredictability here, where there's a breakdown in something like a power supply, electrical grid, or a cyber attack that severely impacts, the financial security, or, the ability for a region to get the goods that they need. Because Taurus is ultimately about, survival through those goods. So really paying attention to that. Now, again, like I said at the beginning, there's no fire. There's no planets and fire signs. So I do see this full moon as like, maybe despite this push and pull between Pisces inspiration and hard work of Virgo, this sort of push and pull here, I'm not sure if we have the resolve to actually do anything about it. I know that there's people saying, oh, you can do anything, whatever. I'm not really sure, to be honest, with this full moon. Because I think there is a prevailing or overwhelming sense of compassion with Pisces right now, of wanting to help people in the world. And with Virgo as a full moon, yes, like we might be able to manifest that. And I certainly hope we do. But without fire, some people, especially those who rely on fire transits, who don't have a lot of fire in their chart, I mean, this is a time when you might just feel drained, when you might feel like just taking a break. And so my advice there is literally March 20th, 2 days after this, is the beginning of Aries season. So just, thank the stars for that, and just give it a couple extra days to really take action on something. So to me, this whole time is about recuperation, reflection, absorption. These are passive energies apart from the Aquarius. These are, even Virgo is an earth sign. These are all negative polarities. These are reacting to things. And, the other sort of trend here that I want to start to kind of close on is that we're waiting really for the grand opening. So that's kind of the term I'm using for this, because, we had sort of that great conjunction in December 2020 with Saturn and Jupiter. In Aquarius, that was the birth of new innovation, new technology, new ideas. And now we have Neptune and Jupiter conjuncting in Pisces on April 12th for the first time since 1856. So this is a very rare occurrence, which makes us powerful. What makes us powerful is the fact that both of these planets rule over Pisces. So Neptune rules Pisces, and Jupiter is the original ruler of Pisces. So that time period is being emphasized right here. This is a crescendo towards that time. So it's a major opening up of energy. We're receptive to intuition and spirituality and transcending the material plane. But this full moon is kind of begging us to ground that overwhelming sensation in the real world, to manifest something before it fades into a dream. So again, like I said at the beginning, there is a fog. We've been living through this fog, especially since the beginning of March. And the Virgo full moon, I really want you to pay attention to where 27 degrees of Virgo is in your chart, because honestly, that might be one of the only areas right now of your chart where you can actually put some plans into place here. And also thinking about where Capricorn is, where Pluto is there, to maybe pursue that in a driven, determined way. Because, that moon is trining Pluto, and it's trining the North Node to some extent. So, again, there is that drive, but it's very momentary with that full moon being at the very tail end of Virgo there. But think about, what have you been what have you been planning for a long time? What have you been wanting to get done? What have you been wanting to translate into the real world from your dreams? And then decide also more practically, how are you going to implement your spiritual side into your daily life? How can you incrementally work at that? Sort of like developing a muscle. And maybe this is also a time to think about holistic healing methods. There's a lot of mutable energy at this time, so honestly, even like sickness could be a focus here, and like sort of unknown, kind of things there. But I think really Pisces Virgo is about a connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. So we're thinking about healing the body in a more mechanical way, mechanistic way. And then with Pisces, we're thinking about more about, and with Virgo to some extent, really thinking about natural remedies too. And we're thinking about even alternative forms of healing that we usually wouldn't engage in maybe those will offer some relief also in your life. So what are the various healing modalities? And then again, with this moon Pluto trine in Virgo, I really think this is also a transformation of what it means to be productive in our society. So we have these crude metrics like GDP per capita. Is that really what defines us here? I feel like we're kind of thinking also about our contributions more meaningful than that. And you can see we're disrupting the nature of work, especially since Uranus was in Aquarius in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. The internet has obviously created these new economies. And now we do have an emphasis on Aquarian energy at this full moon in some pockets here. And so that could be a time to reevaluate what is your role in the workplace, in the working world. Because with all this Pisces energy, I have also noticed a lot of people thinking about ending a certain phase of their career or walking away from their career. And that makes sense because Pisces is about endings. So if you feel kind of, burdened by your job, you feel like, I'm not really sure if I can take this anymore. I mean, I'm not here to give you personal advice about your job, of course. So take this with a grain of salt. But, just what I'm saying here is that how you're feeling is correlated to these planetary placements. So with Pisces, we are feeling a little defeated and hopeless. So if anything, maybe, you're actually feeling like ending a career or giving up when if you just wait a little bit longer for Aries season, you'll get the motivation back. So do realize that you might be a little bit biased right now. You might be biased towards giving up, towards quitting with all this Pisces. So hang in there. And really with this Virgo full moon even, maybe you can be ultra discerning and precise and exact about, okay, what is the issue? Let's compartmentalize this. Maybe I only have a problem with one part of my career, a specific, phase of a project. You know what I mean? Like there's solutions to that that don't have to be about a wholesale departure. So, really think about that. And then again, to bring us back to kind of a spiritual zone, how do you see the divine in the everyday? Again, really just focusing in on that. Now, another piece I want to mention is that around this time, we also have the North Node sort of conjunct to Kamala Harris's natal Jupiter placement. So I think for her, even this sort of time could be about growth in a leadership role. That could be, that could be really big. That could be really big for her. And the other thing about the North Node is that it's squaring Saturn. It's basically squaring Saturn in Aquarius. So the North Node being the area of focus, the sort of the spear point of the current placements in the sky, we're focused on Taurus. We're focused on financial security, stability, feeling grounded. And that's squaring off a little bit against Saturn being those authority figures in Aquarius saying, hey, we got to, be cautious in groups. We have to be cautious about the use of technology. We have to regulate these things. So since Saturn's been in Aquarius, we've also been flirting with the regulation of various technologies and internet companies. And so that's kind of squaring off about where we're trying to go actually right now with our money situation here. So that is a focus right now. It's like amidst all of these challenges, amidst the fog and the confusion and the regulation and the breakdowns in communication and supply chains, how can we just kind of figure out the new ventures of Mars and Aquarius right now with the need to pull back and preserve the status quo with Saturn and Aquarius? What is the dance between those Aquarian placements and how does that connect with our long-term financial situation? Because certainly with Mars in Aquarius, there's a sort of a very adventurous approach to technology and the internet and the promise of that. With Saturn, it wants to hold back a little bit. So that all of those dynamics are kind of disrupting a little bit and throwing a wrench in that momentum towards financial stability, but we have to figure that out for sure. So, again, I think this is a complicated time, but just, again, know that the emotions you're feeling right now are not necessarily your own. And, really think about how can I sort of prepare for that grand opening on April 12th? How can I really prepare for it now? By, again, being open to all those frequencies that are coming in. But then with that Virgo full moon, picking the channel that you really want to pursue here, being precise about it, and integrating it into your daily life. So, anyways, thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you next time. Take care.